My name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Dr. K. David Weidner. Dr. Weidner serves as the executive director of the Pilgrim Monument and the Provincetown Museum. During the program, we're learning about the fascinating exhibit entitled An Anecdotal LGBTQ History of the Last Century of Provincetown. We'll go on a behind-the-scenes tour and in the process come to better understand and appreciate the town's LGBTQ history through intergenerational perspectives. Welcome, so delighted to be able to be here again.
Thanks so much, Dave. Such a lovely pleasure to be on your show and to be able to talk about our museum, the oldest nonprofit on Cape Cod.
Fantastic. Well, before we jump right to the museum and the exhibit, would you please start by just briefly reminding us a little bit about your background, professional interest, and what attracted you to the Monument Museum?
Oh, well, great. Well, I have a background in education, actually organizational development, working with nonprofits all over the world. I've done a lot of work in primary and secondary grade training and education, both in the U.S. and abroad. And my interest from a history perspective has really attracted me to the Pilgrim Monument when I took over as the chief executive in January of 2017, having lived in Washington, D.C. for over 25 years. And made the move to Cape Cod, and couldn't be more happy being here at the Pilgrim Monument, the Provincetown Museum.
Would you remind us a little of the history, but even taking us up to speed, the current mission of the Monument Museum?
Oh, certainly. Well, your viewers are viewing right now a gorgeous image of our tallest all-granite structure in the United States. It was constructed between 1907 and 1910. Our association was founded, as I said earlier, as the oldest nonprofit on Cape Cod in 1892. So we've been around quite a while. The museum itself is kind of circa 1970s, which is at the lower left-hand corner of your screen. But most everyone, visitors to town, come and see the iconic monument, and they see it from the shore. They see it on their drive-in, and it's quite a stellar piece of engineering work. What we've actually been also able to accomplish, as you're able to see in this visual, is our new access to the grounds at the Pilgrim Monument. We planned for many years, actually dating over 100 years, to make a reconnection with the town of Provincetown. Where the monument currently sits is actually the same place where the town hall sat in the late 1800s. It was destroyed by fire. The land was given by the town to our association to make a monument in honor of the Mayflower Pilgrims, who landed here in November 1620. We've added the ability to get back down to town with a new inclined elevator lift called the Bradford Access Lift. Provides ADA access up to our grounds, and you'll see lovely concrete around the monument circle that's all ADA compatible. So we bring people up daily to allow them to view and see our gorgeous grounds and also the harbor of Provincetown.
Fantastic. What's the current mission of the museum?
Well, our mission has changed over the years. The mission still premise of being dedicated to the Mayflower Pilgrims, who landed here in November of 1620 on native Wampanoag soil. This was all Provincetown, and the province lands were all about the native Wampanoag. This was their area. And our mission really didn't encompass that when I arrived here. So with working with the Mashpee tribe and local native Wampanoag people, we wanted to be more inclusive of our mission. We knew that the Native people were not mentioned, but then also the LGBTQ plus population was not mentioned in our mission statement. Provincetown is a haven for members of the LGBTQ plus community, and we needed to include them as well as other pilgrims that come to Provincetown. Between our Bulgarians, our Jamaicans, we have a lot of different folks here other than just our Portuguese fishermen that settled the village in the early 1900s. So our mission now today is much more about truth, tolerance, respect, unity, trust, her, his, and their stories. So we're being very more inclusive. We speak to having Wampanoag members on our board of trustees in our mission, as well as our LGBTQ plus population. I'm very pleased to report that we actually have several members of the African American community on our board of trustees, as well as a member of the Wampanoag Nation. So we're trying to be a more diverse and truthful institution.
And I know a couple of years ago when we highlighted the recently opened Our Story exhibit, that exemplifies the current mission, as does the exhibit that we're about to talk about.
Yes, it was really something of note that obviously we didn't have it in our institution when I arrived. And I was in preparation mode for the 400th commemoration of the Mayflower Pilgrims coming in 2020. 2020 had other things that were that took our mind off of the ability to be open for a commemoration. But we did during pandemic actually construct the Our Story exhibit, and thank you for telling your viewers about the exhibit. We still describe it as our new exhibit because still people don't necessarily know that it's there. It's a story curated by the Native Wampanoag people that talks about their life and times here in Cape Cod, dating back to the early 1600s, well before the Mayflower Pilgrims landed here in Provincetown. It takes you all the way through their time with the Mayflower Pilgrims, the Europeans coming, the destruction of the settlement in Patuxet of their Indian village, and then the colonization of that village by the Mayflower Pilgrims in 1621, which we now know Patuxet is Plymouth. And so our story tells about the story of the Native Wampanoag people. No whitewash on there. The only white person you're going to see is my introduction. Everything else is all written and built by Native Wampanoag people. In fact, the exhibit itself was constructed by a Wampanoag-based construction firm, and also the communications firm Smoke Signals helped put our exhibit together.
Terrific. And I know it's been incredibly well received. With that as a background, let's move on to the current exhibit, most recent, up and running for about a year or so now, and sharing a little bit why and how this one came about.
Well, again, there were many stories that really were not being accurately portrayed or portrayed at all when I arrived here as the executive in 2017. So working with the Board of Trustees by changing our mission, we also changed about the stories that we were telling and the narratives. The LGBTQ plus community is a strong presence of our folks here in Provincetown. So we wanted to create an exhibit in our history museum dedicated to their lives and times. We started first off with a Hat Sisters exhibit, which we'll talk briefly about that later. But the exhibit that we worked on most recently is with the Generations Project. It's a non-for-profit group out of New York City that have been their mission to narrate and to tell and keep the stories of the past of the LGBTQ plus population, as well as the present. So our Anecdotal LGBTQ History of the Last Century of Provincetown talks about the people that were here in our community making Provincetown strong. And the narrative that the Generations Project has done is that they've interviewed people to bring their stories back to life. Beta Cook, Anne McGuire, Timothy O'Connor, who is still with us, talks about their lives and times in Provincetown. And our exhibit shows that effort to our visitors.
Would you share a little bit more about the Generations Project? Because I find their approach fascinating and very instructive to getting across the history of whatever area from the people who lived it. Their emphasis on storytelling is a wonderful approach.
Yeah, it is really quite something when you go to sit down with an interviewer, an interviewee, I guess, and you interview someone like Dan Mullen, who has since passed away, and him telling about his life coming to Provincetown as a young man, as a refuge for lesbian and gay people at the time, that it's an important story to maintain. Dan is no longer with us, but Dan's story remains. And so the Generations Project is really looked at with their artistic director, Adam Golub, and their executive director, Wesley Enos, is to help maintain those stories. So they interview people and collect the narrative, and then our exhibit is actually composites of those interviews. And many of them were done at the Crown and Anchor. Some of them were done in people's homes, but they were all collected to again, remember those stories of the past and yet bring it into the present. The exhibit is divided into two sections. One is the anthology of the history of the LGBTQ plus population in Provincetown. And that's where you can see on the screen two monitors that are showing different imagery. The other side of the exhibit is talking about remnants, an excavation of Provincetown, people that are no longer with us. And yet their spirit and their memory of life and times here in Provincetown remains. Tim O'Connor, who actually works with us here at the Pilgrim Monument, is the lone surviving Hat Sister. He and his departed husband, Dr. John Michael Gray, were instrumental in really going through the AIDS crisis and helping to raise money and helping to raise awareness for people living in Provincetown, but also living with HIV/AIDS all over the world. They had quite an effort during the AIDS time period in the 80s and 90s to really share their opportunity to make creative hats, be present at events, and the Hat Sisters lives on here at in the monument. The story actually, Remnants actually contains one of the sections of Tim O'Connor talking about his husband, the late Dr. John Michael Gray. It's quite touching and kind of gets me a little choked up every now and then. We also see Jennifer Cabral in the video talking about the A House and Reggie Cabral and how the Atlantic House, one of the oldest historically known gay bars in the United States here in Provincetown, was a place and a refuge for musicians. Ella Fitzgerald came here to perform. People that could not perform in other metropolitan cities could have a safe haven and perform here in Provincetown, as they've done then and the past and in the present, as we do today and the future.
Mm-hmm. Once the stories were captured orally on video, what was a little bit about the process of designing the exhibit that we're seeing here in the images?
Well, the process was really pretty straightforward. The labor intensiveness obviously was doing the interviews and collecting that interview data. And honestly, many museums have exhibits that are complete and they're done and it's over. This exhibit, I'm proud to say, will never be complete. It is going to be a continual life-living memorial to the history of Provincetown. And so even as we speak, Adam and the curatorial team from the Generations Project are working to collect stories from people. What we do is that they collect narratives from individuals that have passed away or are still with us now, and we want to capture their story. We conduct interviews with them, and then the data is just saved in a data bank. And then on an annual basis, when we raise enough money to really do editing, we edit those interviews down, then they're compiled into actually the exhibit. Right now, the exhibit is what I'll say is on a loop. You can stand in front of each of the screens and you'll hear and listen to two separate narrations or stories, but they just continue to loop. Our new technology that we're raising money for is to try to make them more of a timeline and also be able to be searchable by individual. So the Generations Project and the Pilgrim Monument, we are raising money to try to get that new tech available so that people can, search for a particular individual or a particular point in time, and it would zero in on that. But right now, they're all on a loop. We have not put them out on the web on purpose. Frankly, we want people to come to visit our museum and to support our mission. So that's why we actually make people read and watch the videos.
Oh, no, I've enjoyed and found very engaging a couple of samples that are on the website and online, the video footage. About how many individuals have you interviewed? Has the project interviewed? And do you have information about?
We probably have, I don't want to speak too much out of turn, Adam would be the best, but we probably have an archive or database of maybe over 30 to 35 individual interviews that have been or collected or are in process of being collected. And the videos themselves are about what we have now. We probably have a third of that online or visible in the exhibit. And again, this exhibit changes every year. So next year we could have another third, or we could have some repetition. The goal will be is to keep it changing. We find that there's great expense in creating these videos. As you know, Jay, from being in the TV business, this editing takes a lot of time. It takes professionals, and it doesn't just happen overnight. So we need to raise money to do that. For right now, I know that Adam is planning a new update for 2024. We'll probably do that like we did in the past, launch that on the Pride weekend in Provincetown, the first weekend of June of 2024. Again, don't have definites that we're doing that, but that will probably be, if we follow our schedule, that was what we'll do.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a little bit about the Hat Sisters, and here we see wonderful display highlighting them. Would you share a little bit more about their background and what visitors can enjoy and appreciate in the display and at the museum?
Sure, I'd be happy to. The Hat Sisters case was the very first case that I installed here at the Pilgrim Monument in 2017. Parallel to working with the Wampanoag community, I wanted to ensure that we had a case dedicated and started to our LGBTQ plus community. So working with Tim O'Connor and actually my husband, Dr. William Gannon, we created with members of our collections team a bit of Hat Sister memorabilia. And so inside the case currently, you see a couple of very festive hats. Some Fact Spirit magazine did an expose on Dr. Gray and Mr. O'Connor. That image of the magazine publication is available. The Easter Bunny, the Easter Parade hat is When Pigs Fly is available to see. A couple pairs of their shoes and some earrings. The collage of pictures really shows their life and times throughout Provincetown over time, when they would actually create a hat for an event, be it a 4th of July party here at the monument, be it a GLAD gala, be it a PAM gala, an Outer Cape Lobster Fest. They always had a hat to commemorate or to celebrate a particular event, maybe even a carnival weekend. So that's what that imagery will show, and the narrative will tell a little bit about their life. Dr. John Michael Gray, PhD in art, visual arts, and he's a visual artist, and he was actually the art supervisor for the Newton City School District. Timothy O'Connor is a registered architect, engineer. now retired, but works here at the Pilgrim Monument as one of our chief ambassadors for customer service, works at our gift shop and also down at Bradford Street, the elevator access, and loves to talk to people about the Hat Sisters, especially when he's on duty. Actually, he is today when we're being open. Another one of the nice images that's actually quite personal for me is in the lower left-hand corner is a picture of Tim and John Michael at the Red Inn. I was having a birthday party celebration, and they made a special guest appearance to wish me happy birthday. And that's one of the last birthday pictures I have with them. So it's quite memorable, and we made sure that that was also in the case, so people could see the individuality that the Hat Sisters had, and their sharing of a very dark time of what happened in Provincetown or what happened around the world during the HIV/AIDS crisis, and they made fun and joy and helped AIDS organizations make money to help people that were sick with HIV/AIDS. So they really gave back so much to the community, and it's right that they have a place in Provincetown history, and certainly here at the Pilgrim Monument.
Very fitting indeed. What's been some of the reaction and feedback to the exhibit since it's been on display?
Well, we've been on display since 2017, so we actually have had quite a bit of feedback about it. It's been quite educational for many of the visitors to come to town and say, oh, I didn't know what about these guys wearing hats and dresses, but they're not wearing drag, so what's all this about? So that prevents or creates a lot of conversation and education. And again, we go back to our mission of truth, the tolerance, the respect, the unity, the trust. And the her, his, and their story is permeated throughout our museum. And this exhibit primarily talks about the truth and what the Hat Sisters did. So many people come and they're questioning it, and they ask questions and they learn from it. And that is the goal of what a museum does, is to really educate and not insult. We want people to understand the meaning of our museum and our institution. And so these cases all represent that. I think probably one of the neatest stories I have to recount, though, is a day I was actually working with Tim at the front desk. Yes, executive directors do work the front desk too. It's great to be part of our opportunity to meet with our visitors and our patrons. And this young man, probably, he might have been 9 or 10, came in with his parents. Tim was working at the desk and said they bought their tickets and had their whole, introduction to the museum, and they went around about their business, saw the exhibit, and the young man came up to Tim, probably, I don't know, half an hour or 45 minutes later, and said, "Mister, are you a Hat Sister?" And of course, Tim blushed and said, "Yes, I am. Why do you ask?" He says, "Well, I really love your hats. And I like to wear hats at home, and mommy lets me do that." And mommy and daddy were right next to the young man. And it was such a wonderful energy feeling to allow that these parents were letting this young man express who he was, to be truthful about his life, and to acknowledge that he liked to wear hats. Whether he was gay or lesbian, or whether he was gay or not, or questioning at his young age was not really the point. The point is about learning, and it's about acceptance and tolerance. And that's that's one of my most favorite stories of Tim O'Connor at the front desk and a young patron asking about the Hat Sisters.
Terrific, terrific. A wonderful emphasis and approach to the exhibit has been the intergenerational connection. Just a couple words about those individuals who have participated and talked about relatives, friends, and what they think about the exhibit and what the experience has been like for them.
Well, it's always interesting to meet our visitors, and we meet them daily, whether it's on the grounds or whether it's riding up with them in the elevator or whether at the front desk. everyone is always so interested in learning and learning about our exhibits, about the times. Many people come to Provincetown and don't necessarily know that we're an LGBTQ plus haven and a safe space for folks. They certainly, many of them don't know that the Mayflower Pilgrims landed here. Everybody thinks the Mayflower Pilgrims landed in Plymouth. They went to Plymouth after staying with us for 5.5 weeks, finding fresh water and acknowledging in the situation with the Wampanoag people. Many people don't know that the native people were taken back to England as slaves. And that's something that we tell in our museum. So people do listen to these stories. And it's not about us being insulting or telling them that their beliefs that they have are not theirs. Everyone has the right to their opinion, but we have historical facts that have been dated for centuries. And so it's our role as museums and museum educators is to help share that in an unbiased and truthful way, which is what we're doing here at the Pilgrim Monument in the Provincetown Museum. And I think our guests really appreciate the honesty and the truth.
For sure, for sure. What are some of the upcoming programs, plans, events that you have in mind?
Well, it's this time of the year that we're getting toward, we're out of the season of activity with many guests in town. Where the summer season is over. It kind of ends on Labor Day, but we still are open. We're open to the public 6 days a week from Wednesday through Monday. Our first ticket sales at 10 a.m. and the last ticket sales at 4 p.m. The last climb of the Pilgrim Monument is at 4:15 in the afternoon, and the last ride on the inclined elevator is at 4:45. We want people to get a whole experience, so we give them enough time after our last ticket sale, and the doors go closed at 4 o'clock for visitors, to allow people to have enough time to experience the museum and the monument. But we are getting ready to close. We'll be closing for the season on November the 11th, which I would love to share with your viewers. For the first time since 2019, we are going to be opening the grounds to the public again for the annual lighting of the Pilgrim Monument. That will be happening at 6 o'clock p.m. on Saturday, November 11th. Yes, November 11th. What's so important about that date? Well, it actually is the date that the Mayflower Pilgrims landed on the shores of what we now know as Provincetown here in the Wampanoag territory. And we light the monument for 5.5 weeks to dedicate that time to their time here in Provincetown. So that'll happen on the 11th of November, Saturday evening, 6 o'clock p.m. We will be having the grounds open to the public. We're going to be doing a fundraiser earlier that evening for VIP guests, a ticketed event, but the grounds will be open through our ADA access gate or elevator following, getting ready for the lighting at 6. We'll be closed then for the season from November 11th through April the 1st of 2024. However, we are going to open up for the Holly Folly weekend for a quick couple days on December 1, 2, and 3 to let people come into our museum, shop, visit. Our annual meeting of our membership, the oldest nonprofit on Cape Cod, will be on that Saturday, the 2nd of December. And we're also guaranteed guests by the Boston Gay Men's Chorus, who will be doing their warm-up in our East Gallery, prepping for their return to the Provincetown Town Hall that evening. So we let people come in. It's a great opportunity. Hear some carols, hear some music, have some hot chocolate and cookies after our annual meeting of the membership. That's on December 2nd. And then we will indeed be closing until April 1st of 2024.
Terrific. So a lot going on even in the upcoming weeks. How can viewers and others, in closing, keep informed and find out about upcoming plans into the new year?
Well, we're grateful of the fact that you are broadcasting us and sharing the names of the Pilgrim Monument and the Provincetown Museum with your viewers around the world. Easy thing for us is go visit our website, which is pretty easy to remember. It's www.pilgrim, Pilgrim, -monument, monument.org. Pilgrim-monument.org. That'll give you information about our opening times, as well as tickets currently on sale for our museum, but more information about our lighting and how you can make a contribution to our annual lighting campaign to keep the Pilgrim Monument lit for tolerance and acceptance.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, David, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. Want to thank you again for taking the time to be here, informing us again about the monument, the museum, and most importantly, the exhibit and other upcoming events. Continued success, and look forward to connecting another time.
Thank you so much, Jay. We appreciate that. Good best wishes to you and to your team. Thank you.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us, and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.